Hi, welcome to the Aftermath Tales. Ready for a new story? Very well, let's begin.
When people ask me if I feel guilty, I always laugh. Guilt is for people who don't understand how the world really works. My name is Gracie Miller, and I take what I want. I stare at my reflection in the bathroom mirror of Anthony's downtown penthouse. 25 looks good on me, better than 30 looks on his wife. I apply another coat of the Chanel lipstick he bought me last week. $45 for a tube of lipstick. My grandparents would have had a stroke at the thought. You need to save for a rainy day, Gracie, they'd say, dragging me through Walmart aisles while my friends wore clothes from the mall. What they never understood is that I was already drowning in their rainy day. Why save for a storm when you're already soaked to the bone? I wasn't born heartless. I was made this way. When my father walked out on my mother for a younger woman, he taught me my first lesson: in this world, you're either the one who takes or the one who gets taken from. My mother reinforced it when she dropped me with my grandparents to chase after a man who didn't do kids. 20 years later, and I still remember how she wouldn't meet my eyes when she left. The way I see it, I'm just playing by the rules everyone else established. Anthony was laughably easy. Men like him always are, successful, handsome, bored with domestic life. I first saw him during a client meeting at Lambert Advertising where I work. Son of the CEO of Reynolds Industries, our biggest client. The wedding ring was the first thing I noticed. The second was how quickly his eyes found me in a room. Our first accidental encounter was at Vare, the rooftop bar where executives drink after hours. I made sure to wear the red dress that costs a week's salary but makes men forget their names. You're wasting your talent at Lambert, he told me that night, 3 whiskeys in. Someone who looks like you should be sitting across from the camera, not behind it. I laughed and touched his arm. Maybe I like being the one who controls what people see. 4 drinks in, he mentioned his wife for the first time. Meredith and I, we have an understanding. They never have an understanding. They just want to believe they do. I saw pictures of his family on his desk once, his pretty wife with her perfect smile, his teen daughter who looked just like her, and the little boy with Anthony's eyes. They looked happy. The thought made something twist inside me. I hate happy families. They're always hiding something ugly underneath. By our 3rd business dinner, Anthony was kissing me in his car. By the 5th, he was bringing me to a hotel. Men like him are so predictable it's almost boring. Almost. Tell me about your wife, I whispered one night as we lay tangled in 1,000 thread count sheets. He tensed. Why would you want to talk about her? I want to know what I'm up against, I said, tracing my finger along his chest. Know thy enemy, right? He laughed, but it sounded uncomfortable. Meredith isn't your enemy. Isn't she? I propped myself up on one elbow. She has everything I want. And what's that? He asked, his eyes darkening. I lied. What I really wanted was what she represented: security, status, the life I'd been denied. But men need to believe they're the prize. Anthony started sending me gifts after that night. Expensive ones. Jewelry. Designer clothes. The down payment on a luxury car. Each gift came with the same message: don't leave me. I'm worth the wait. I kept every receipt. 6 weeks into our affair, I decided it was time to meet the wife. Are you insane? Anthony hissed when I suggested attending the annual Reynolds Foundation Gala. Meredith will be there. I work on the Reynolds account, I reminded him sweetly. It would be strange if I wasn't there. Unless you're ashamed of me? Men like Anthony can't stand the idea of being thought cowardly. 2 days later, I received my official invitation. I spent a month's salary on the dress, a black silk number that suggested everything while revealing nothing. When I walked into the ballroom, conversations stopped. I felt Meredith's eyes on me before I even saw her. She wasn't what I expected. Not some dowdy housewife or bitter shrew. Meredith Reynolds was elegant, poised, and surprisingly young-looking for 30. The kind of woman other women admire. I hated her immediately. "You must be Gracie," she said, extending her hand. Her voice was warm but her eyes were arctic. "Anthony's mentioned you. The rising star at Lambert." "All good things, I hope," I smiled, the perfect picture of professional courtesy. "Interesting things," she replied. I always find it fascinating what catches my husband's attention these days. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Amateur. If she thought marking her territory would scare me, she didn't understand who she was dealing with. "Your daughter is lovely," I said, nodding toward Cadence across the room. "She has your eyes. And Anthony's determination. And your little boy, Larry, isn't it? He's what, 7 now? Such a crucial age for a boy to have his father's guidance." I watched the color drain from her face. Message received, I knew her family. I had access to her world. The battle lines were drawn. Later that evening, I made sure she saw Anthony's hand lingering too long on my lower back, saw him laugh too hard at something I whispered in his ear. The flash of pain in her eyes was exquisite. This wasn't just about landing Anthony anymore. Making Meredith suffer had become its own reward. I began leaving evidence for Meredith to find. A long blonde hair on Anthony's collar. My perfume lingering on his clothes. Text messages I knew he'd be too careless to delete. Meredith asked about my late meetings again. Anthony told me one evening, his brow furrowed. "What did you tell her?" I asked, pouring him another whiskey. I always kept his glass full when we discussed his wife. That the Reynolds campaign is demanding. He ran his hand through his hair, looking troubled. "I hate lying to her." "Do you hate lying more than you love being with me?" I asked, letting my robe fall open just enough. His moral conflict evaporated with his self-control. Men are so simple. The next phase of my plan was to insert myself into their social circle. I befriended the wives of Anthony's colleagues, women who had known Meredith for years. I played the role of the innocent, ambitious young professional. I listened to their problems, remembered their children's names, became their confidant. All while sleeping with one of their husbands. "Vanessa mentioned you had lunch with her yesterday," Anthony said one day, sounding confused. Vanessa was his CFO's wife and Meredith's closest friend. "She's delightful," I replied brightly. "Did you know she volunteers at the same children's hospital as Meredith? She thinks I'd be perfect for their fundraising committee." The look of pure panic on his face was priceless. "Gracie, I don't think that's a good idea." "Why not?" "I'm just trying to give back to the community." I widened my eyes in mock innocence. "Unless you're worried about something?" "This is getting complicated," he muttered. "Life is complicated, Anthony." I moved to sit on his lap. "But we're worth it, aren't we?" The following week, I joined the hospital fundraising committee. Meredith quit 2 days later. 3 months in, I engineered the confrontation. I sent flowers to Anthony at home, ostensibly from the Reynolds campaign team but with a handwritten note signed with just a G and a lipstick kiss. I timed the delivery for when I knew Meredith would be home alone. She called me that night. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Gracie." Her voice was tight with controlled fury. "I think we need to talk." "Meredith." What a surprise, I feigned shock. "Is everything okay?" "Don't insult me by pretending," she snapped. "I know about you and Anthony." I paused, as if considering whether to continue the charade, then sighed dramatically. "How long have you known?" "Long enough." "I want you to end it. Now." I laughed. The sound was cruel even to my own ears. That's not going to happen. I have 2 children whose lives you're destroying, she said, her voice breaking slightly. Do you even care about that? About as much as my father cared when he left my mother, I replied coldly. About as much as my mother cared when she abandoned me for a man who didn't want kids. The world is harsh, Meredith. Your children will learn that sooner or later. You're sick, she whispered. No, I'm realistic. Anthony doesn't love you anymore. He hasn't for a long time. He's just been too comfortable to leave. That's not true, but her voice wavered. He told me about your bedroom problems, I lied smoothly. How long has it been since you've been intimate? 6 months? A year? He needs a real woman, Meredith, not a glorified nanny. The sound she made was something between a gasp and a sob. I closed my eyes, savoring it. He'll never leave his children, she said finally. Want to bet? He's meeting with a divorce attorney next week. Ask him. Another lie, but it would force Anthony's hand when she confronted him. I'll send you a wedding invitation. I hung up and immediately called Anthony. Your wife knows everything, I said without preamble. She just called me, threatening me. What? How? He sounded panicked. I don't know, but she was hysterical. Saying she'd destroy my career, tell everyone at Lambert. I injected a tremor into my voice. Anthony, I'm scared. His response was exactly what I'd hoped for, rage, protectiveness, and then, resignation. I'll talk to her. This has gone far enough. When Anthony came to my apartment the next night, his face was haggard. It's over, he said simply. I told Meredith I want a divorce. What did she say? I asked, barely containing my triumph. She threw things. Said I'd regret it. That she'd take the kids, the house, half the company. His hands were shaking as he poured himself a drink. Cadence overheard everything. She was screaming at me, saying she hates me. Larry was just crying. I went to him, wrapped my arms around him. They'll understand eventually. We'll make them understand. He looked at me with sudden clarity. This is what you wanted all along, isn't it? I didn't deny it. Instead, I kissed him, tasting the whiskey and defeat on his lips. What I want is you. All of you. Not just the scraps of time you can spare between your real life and me. That night, as he slept beside me, I scrolled through social media and found Meredith had already changed her status to "It's complicated." The comments section was a flood of confusion and support from friends. I smiled in the dark. Let the public humiliation begin. Anthony moved in with me a week later. I'd won. But my victory came with unexpected complications, namely, Cadence Reynolds. I underestimated her from the start. I thought she'd be like any other teenager, self-absorbed, easily manipulated, ultimately powerless. I was wrong. Our first major confrontation happened at the Reynolds Industries annual charity gala. I insisted on attending as Anthony's official partner, overriding his concerns about it being too soon. Your colleagues need to see us as a legitimate couple, I argued. Not some dirty secret. The event was held at the grand ballroom of the city's most exclusive hotel. Everyone who was anyone in the business world would be there, including William Reynolds, Anthony's father and CEO of Reynolds Industries. I wore a scarlet gown that cost more than most people's monthly rent, elegant but bold enough to announce my arrival. My father will be there, Anthony warned as we pulled up to the venue. He hasn't exactly come around to the idea of us. He will, I said confidently. Once he sees how happy you are. I had no idea what I was walking into. William Reynolds was not what I expected. In my mind, I'd pictured an older version of Anthony, charming, somewhat pliable. The man who stood at the entrance greeting guests was something else entirely. Tall, imposing, with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. When he saw us, his smile vanished. "Anthony," he said, his voice clipped. He didn't look at me. "Dad," Anthony replied, tension evident in every line of his body. "You remember Gracie Miller from Lambert Advertising?" William Reynolds finally turned his gaze to me. I've faced down angry clients, aggressive men, difficult situations, but nothing prepared me for the cold assessment in those eyes. He didn't see a person. He saw a problem to be eliminated. "Miss Miller," he said with glacial politeness. "What a surprise to see you here." Before I could respond, he turned back to his son. "A word, Anthony. Now." Without waiting for a response, he walked away, clearly expecting Anthony to follow. "I'll be right back," Anthony murmured, squeezing my hand. "Just mingle." I watched as Anthony followed his father to a quiet corner of the ballroom. Even from a distance, I could see the intensity of their conversation. William Reynolds spoke with barely contained fury, his face tight with controlled rage. Anthony seemed to shrink before my eyes, nodding occasionally, unable to meet his father's gaze. After what felt like an eternity, Anthony returned, his face ashen. "He wants to speak with both of us." "In his office." "His office? Now?" I looked around at the gala in full swing. "Can't it wait?" "No," Anthony said grimly. "It can't." William Reynolds' office was on the top floor of the Reynolds building, a corner suite with floor-to-ceiling windows that showcased the city's skyline. It should have been impressive. Instead, it felt like walking into a lion's den. He was standing behind his desk when we entered, examining a framed photo I couldn't see. He didn't invite us to sit. "Miss Miller," he said without preamble. "Do you know what this company means to the Reynolds family?" I forced a smile. "I understand it's very important to you, Mr. Reynolds." "Very important," he repeated, his voice dangerously soft. "For generations of Reynolds men have built this company. My grandfather started with nothing. My father expanded it. I took it international." He finally looked up. It was meant to be Anthony's legacy. His children's birthright. The emphasis on his children was unmistakable. "With all due respect, sir," I began, drawing on every ounce of professional confidence I possessed, "I don't see how Anthony's personal life affects his ability to lead the company." William Reynolds actually laughed, a short, humorless sound. "Then you understand nothing about business, Miss Miller. Or family." He turned to his son. "Tell her what the board said, Anthony." Anthony cleared his throat. "Dad, I don't think." "Tell her." Anthony's shoulders slumped. "The board has concerns about the recent changes in my personal life. They feel it reflects poorly on the company's values." "Concerns?" William echoed. "That's a polite way of putting it. 3 of our largest clients have quietly inquired whether you'll be remaining as COO." He fixed me with a stare. "Family values matter to our clients, Miss Miller. Loyalty. Honor. Commitment. The things my son seems to have forgotten." I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation and anger. "I think you're being unfair. People fall out of love. Marriages end." "Indeed they do," William agreed, his voice deadly calm. "And careers end too. Especially when one demonstrates such profoundly poor judgment." The threat hung in the air between us. "Dad," Anthony finally found his voice. "This isn't appropriate. Gracie is my choice. I'd think you of all people would respect that I'm finally taking control of my own life." William Reynolds' expression hardened. "Is that what you call it?" Taking control? Because from where I stand, you've destroyed the lives of everyone who loves you, your wife, your children, your mother and me, for what? A moment of weakness? A pretty face? I opened my mouth to object, but he cut me off with a raised hand. Miss Miller, I'm not interested in your perspective. I'm interested in my family's well-being. My grandchildren's future. He moved around the desk, standing directly in front of Anthony. Do you have any idea what you've done to Cadence? To Larry? Anthony looked away. They'll adjust. Kids are resilient. Resilient, William repeated, his voice cracking slightly. Is that what you call it? Because that's not what her school counselor calls it. That's not what I'd call the phone call I received from her last night. My stomach clenched. What phone call? William ignored me, focusing entirely on his son. She asked me, Anthony, if all men eventually abandon their families. If that's just how things work. If she should even bother getting married someday, if this is what happens. Anthony flinched. She's 14 years old, William continued, his voice rising. 14. And you've taught her that marriage vows mean nothing. That family can be discarded when something newer comes along. That's not fair, I interjected. Anthony didn't abandon his children. Meredith is the one making it difficult for him to see them. William Reynolds finally looked at me, his gaze so contemptuous it made my blood run cold. You really believe that, don't you? That you're not responsible for any of this. That you're somehow the hero of this story. Before I could respond, there was a commotion outside. The door burst open, and Cadence stormed in, followed by a flustered assistant trying to stop her. I'm sorry, Mr. Reynolds, she insisted. It's fine, Janet, William said, his tone softening immediately. Cadence is always welcome. Cadence stopped short when she saw us, her eyes widening. She was dressed for the gala in a modest blue dress that made her look both younger and older than her 14 years. Behind her, I could see Larry peering around the door frame, uncertain. Grandpa, I didn't know you had, her voice trailed off as she registered our presence, her expression hardening. Oh. Cadence, Anthony stepped forward. What are you doing here? I thought you were staying with your mother tonight. Mom was invited to the gala, Cadence said, her voice cold. She's on the hospital board, remember? Or did you forget that part of her life too? Anthony flinched. Sweetheart, this isn't the time. When is the time, Dad? Cadence demanded, her voice rising. When you're not with her? Because that's never, is it? William put a hand on her shoulder. Cadence, perhaps we should. No, Grandpa, she shook her head. I need to say this. I've been trying to say it for months. She turned to Anthony, tears starting to well in her eyes. Do you ever think about what you're teaching me, Dad? About what marriage means? About promises? The room fell silent. Even I couldn't find words. What if, Cadence's voice cracked, but she continued, what if one day I get married, and my husband does to me what you did to Mom? What if he meets someone like her, she jerked her head toward me, and decides his vows don't matter anymore? His family doesn't matter anymore? Would that make you happy, Dad? The question hung in the air like a physical thing. Anthony looked stricken. Answer her, William said quietly. Your daughter deserves an answer. Anthony's face crumpled. No. God, no, Cadence. I would never want that for you. Then why is it okay for you to do it to Mom, she demanded. Why is it okay for you to hurt us like this? From the doorway, Larry began to cry softly. The sound seemed to fill the entire room. I never meant to hurt you, Anthony whispered. But you did, Cadence said, her voice suddenly steady beyond her years. You did hurt us. And for what? For her? She turned to look at me then, her young face twisted with a hatred that chilled me to the bone. Was she worth it, Dad? Was she worth losing your family for? Anthony had no answer. William Reynolds moved to stand beside his granddaughter, one arm around her shoulders. The three of them, grandfather, granddaughter, grandson crying in the doorway, formed a tableau of the family Anthony had abandoned. The family I had helped destroy. For the first time, I saw myself through their eyes, not as the glamorous other woman, not as the prize Anthony had chosen, but as the destroyer. The homewrecker. The villain in their story. William finally broke the silence. Anthony, you have a choice to make. It's very simple. Her, he nodded toward me, his eyes never leaving his son's face, or your family. All of it. Your children. Your position in the company. Your inheritance. Everything the Reynolds name means. You can't do that, I said automatically, finding my voice at last. You can't just cut him off. William Reynolds finally looked at me directly, and the contempt in his eyes made me want to disappear. Miss Miller, you have no idea what I can and cannot do. The Reynolds Family Trust has a morality clause that my father insisted on. The majority shareholders of the company, myself included, have a fiduciary duty to protect its reputation. And as for my personal fortune, he shrugged. I built it. I decide who benefits from it. He turned back to Anthony. 1 week. That's how long you have to decide. But know this, his voice hardened to granite, that woman will never be welcomed into this family. Not at our holidays, not at our gatherings, not at my funeral. She will never wear your mother's jewelry or set foot in the family home. And if you choose her, Anthony, understand what you're really choosing, to be as dead to me as your mother is. The words fell like blows. I had never felt smaller, more insignificant, than I did in that moment. The mighty Gracie Miller, reduced to nothing by an old man and a teenage girl. Anthony looked at his father, at his daughter, at his son still crying in the doorway. Then he looked at me. In his eyes, I saw something I'd never seen before, doubt. Real, profound doubt. Without another word, William Reynolds guided Cadence toward the door, collecting Larry as they went. At the threshold, he paused, looking back at his son. 1 week, Anthony. Think carefully about the legacy you want to leave. About the man you want to be. The door closed behind them, leaving Anthony and me alone in the suddenly too large office. The silence stretched between us, heavy with all that had been said, and all that hadn't. Anthony, I began, reaching for his hand. He's manipulating you. Using your children too. He pulled away from my touch. Don't, he said, his voice hollow. Just, don't. He walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. The empire that should have been his. The legacy he was on the verge of losing. So tell me, Gracie, he finally said, not turning around. Are you worth all that? I had no answer. The first cracks in my victory appeared after that disastrous confrontation. Anthony became distant, preoccupied. He started coming home late, avoiding my questions, drinking more than usual. That night, for the first time, I felt fear. Anthony was my meal ticket, my revenge against the world, my proof that I was worth choosing. Without him, what did I have? A rented luxury apartment I couldn't afford on my own. A job that might not survive the scandal. A life built entirely on someone else's foundation. I launched a counteroffensive. I seduced Anthony with a desperation I'd never shown before. I played to his ego, his desires, his fantasies. I became whatever he wanted, supportive, wild, understanding, challenging. My performance was flawless because the stakes had never been higher. I need you, I whispered one night, allowing real vulnerability to creep into my voice. It wasn't entirely an act. You're all I have, Anthony. For a while, it seemed to work. Anthony recommitted to the divorce, to us. But then came the financial disclosures. Meredith's lawyer is asking for all my financials, he said one evening, looking grim. Including every gift I've given you. Every dinner. Every trip. So? You can afford it. It's not the money, Gracie. It's how it looks. Dad says it could affect shareholder confidence if they think I'm being fiscally irresponsible. The way he looked at me made it clear I was the fiscal irresponsibility. That same week, I was called into my boss's office at Lambert. The Reynolds account was being reassigned. No explanation given. My other clients began to cancel meetings. It's just a coincidence, Anthony assured me, but we both knew better. The Reynolds family was sending a message. I ran into Meredith at Nordstrom, of all places. She looked different, thinner, but with a new hardness in her eyes. She was with Vanessa, who gave me a cold stare before walking away to give us privacy. Enjoying your shopping spree? Meredith asked, eyeing the bags in my hands. I hear Anthony's credit card statements make for interesting reading these days. Jealousy isn't a good look at your age, I replied, but my voice lacked its usual bite. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You know what the board told Anthony yesterday? That he needs to clean up his personal life or forget about succeeding his father. But I guess he hasn't told you that yet. My blood ran cold. You're lying. Am I? Ask him about the family trust. Ask him what happens to his inheritance if he divorces the mother of his children. She smiled, and for the first time, I saw something of myself in her, a calculated cruelty. You thought you were playing chess, Gracie. But you didn't even know what game board you were on. That night, I casually asked Anthony about the family trust. The look of shock on his face told me everything. How did you know about that? He demanded. Does it matter? Is it true? That you lose your inheritance if you divorce Meredith? He poured himself a double whiskey before answering. Not exactly. The trust has a morality clause. My grandfather was old-fashioned. In cases of moral turpitude, his words, the trustees can vote to restrict access. And leaving your wife for another woman counts as moral turpitude, I said flatly. Potentially. According to my father, yes. How much? I asked. How much are we talking about? He named a figure that made my head spin. Millions. Tens of millions. A fortune that made every gift he'd given me look like pocket change. So what are you going to do? I asked, trying to keep the desperation from my voice. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I need to think. 2 weeks later, my company credit card was declined at lunch with a client. When I called Anthony, he didn't pick up. When I got back to the office, my personal belongings were in a box, and security was waiting to escort me out. Lambert was downsizing. I drove straight to Anthony's office, but his assistant said he was in meetings all day. I knew what that meant. I was being ghosted. That night, he finally came to the apartment. One look at his face, and I knew. You're going back to her, I said. It wasn't a question. It's not just about the money, he said, not meeting my eyes. It's about my kids. Cadence is struggling in school. Larry started wetting the bed again. So you're just going back? After everything? My voice rose with each word. What about us? What about me? There will be a generous settlement, he said, as if I was an employee being laid off. The apartment is paid through the end of the year. And I've arranged for a position for you at a friend's agency in Chicago. Chicago. He wasn't just leaving me, he was exiling me. I loved you, I said, the words sounding hollow even to my own ears. For the first time, I realized they might actually be true. Somewhere along the way, my perfect scheme had backfired. I'd fallen for my own mark. Did you? He asked, finally looking at me directly. Or did you love what I represented? You can't just throw me away, I said, panic rising. I have nothing left. No job, no money. That's not my problem anymore, he cut me off, suddenly cold. You're an adult, Gracie. Figure it out. That's when I realized the truth. Anthony wasn't some helpless victim I'd seduced away from his perfect life. He was a predator who'd found a wounded animal in me, used me for his midlife crisis, and was now discarding me when I became inconvenient. We were the same, he and I. Except he had a safety net, and I had nothing. I'll tell everyone, I threatened. The press. Your children. Everyone will know what you did. He smiled, and it was nothing like the warm smile I'd fallen for. Go ahead. My father's lawyers have already prepared a statement about my regrettable lapse in judgment and temporary separation from Meredith. We'll weather it. The question is, will you? How do you think the job market looks for homewreckers these days? I slapped him. Hard. He grabbed my wrist before I could do it again. The lease is paid until December, he said calmly. Use the time wisely. He released me and walked to the door. Don't contact me or my family again. It's over, Gracie. After he left, I screamed until my voice gave out. I threw things, broke things, destroyed the expensive gifts he'd given me in a rage that felt like it could consume the world. When I finally collapsed, exhausted and hoarse, I realized I was alone in a beautiful cage I could no longer afford, surrounded by the wreckage of a life that had never really been mine. I didn't go quietly. I couldn't afford to. First, I tried blackmail. I had texts, photos, receipts, evidence of Anthony's infidelity that could humiliate him publicly. I demanded a better settlement, a real job, security. His response came in the form of a cease and desist letter from the Reynolds family attorneys, threatening lawsuits for harassment, defamation, and extortion. Next, I tried begging. I called, texted, emailed, oscillating between threats and pleas. I'd changed my life for him. Burned bridges. Given up everything. Didn't that count for something? His numbers were changed. His email bounced back. A restraining order arrived at my door. In desperation, I went to their house, the beautiful family home in the suburbs that should have been mine. Meredith answered the door. Please, I said, all pretense gone. I have nothing left. She studied me for a long moment. That's not entirely true, she said finally. You have exactly what you came in with, yourself. The difference is, now you know your true worth. He used me, I whispered. Yes, she agreed. And you used him. The difference is, he had a safety net. I loved him, I insisted. She almost looked sympathetic. Maybe. But not enough to consider who you were hurting. Not enough to build something real instead of stealing someone else's life. What am I supposed to do now? I asked, hating the weakness in my voice. That's not my problem, she said, echoing Anthony's words. But then she added something he hadn't, but whatever you do, Gracie, I hope you learn from this. Some prizes aren't worth winning. As she closed the door, I saw Cadence watching from the stairs, her young face hard with an adult's contempt. In that moment, I saw myself reflected in her eyes, the villain of the story. The cautionary tale. I realized then that I'd never really wanted Anthony. I'd wanted what he represented, security, status, proof that I was worth choosing. In pursuing that, I'd become exactly what I hated most, someone who abandoned others for their own gain. Just like my father. Just like my mother. 3 months later, I watched from across the street as Anthony and Meredith emerged from their Bentley at another charity gala, his hand resting possessively on the small of her back. The gossip had died down. The scandal had been managed. I'd been erased. My phone dinged with a text from my grandfather, "Your grandmother's not doing well. Could use a visit." I'd deleted their previous messages, but something stopped me this time. Perhaps it was the realization that they were the only people who had never abandoned me, even when I'd abandoned them. Later that night, I found myself scrolling through Instagram, stopping at a photo posted by Cadence Reynolds. Her family, smiling on a beach somewhere tropical. Anthony, Meredith, the boy, a perfect family portrait. The caption read, "Healing time with my favorite people." Something twisted inside me. Not jealousy, exactly. Something deeper and more painful. I thought of my mother leaving, my father's abandonment. The cycle I'd continued. My reflection in the phone screen looked back at me, beautiful, empty, alone in a luxury apartment I would have to vacate in 2 weeks. I'd gotten exactly what I'd always wanted. And somehow, it felt like nothing at all. I close Instagram and open my contacts. I hover over my grandfather's number for a long moment before pressing call. Gracie? His voice sounds older than I remember. Is that really you? Yeah, I say, my voice cracking. It's me. I heard Grandma's not well. She's hanging in there. A pause. She'd love to see you. I don't have a car anymore, I admit. Or much money for a bus ticket. Another pause. I'll come get you. Just tell me where. As I give him the address of my soon-to-be former luxury apartment, I feel something break inside me. Not my heart, that had broken long ago. Maybe my pride. Or maybe the walls I'd built around myself for protection that had become my prison. I've made a mess of everything, Grandpa, I whisper. We all do sometimes, he says simply. The question is, what are you going to do about it now? For the first time in years, I don't have a scheme. No angle. No plan for taking what I want. All I have is the truth. I'm Gracie Miller, 25 years old, and I've been so busy trying to take what other people have that I never built anything of my own. A year passed. I moved to a small apartment in Chicago, took the job Anthony had arranged, a step down from my position at Lambert, with half the salary and none of the prestige. I was lucky to have it. The advertising world is smaller than most people realize, and word travels fast. I visited my grandparents regularly. My grandmother recovered from her illness, somewhat. My grandfather never mentioned my absence, my silence, the years I'd treated them like an embarrassing footnote in my life rather than the only people who had ever truly loved me. One evening, as I was leaving work, I saw him. Anthony. Standing outside my office building, looking uncertain. Older. His hair had more gray than I remembered. Gracie, he said when he saw me. You look well. I didn't. I knew that. I'd lost weight. My clothes were from department stores now, not designer boutiques. But I nodded anyway. What are you doing here, Anthony? He hesitated. I had a business meeting in Chicago. I thought, maybe we could talk. We went to a coffee shop nearby. Nothing like the upscale places he used to take me. He looked uncomfortable, out of place among the students and young professionals. How are you? He asked, stirring his coffee absently. Fine, I lied. Working. Living. You know. Good. That's good. A pause. I wanted to see how you were doing. Make sure you were okay. Something flared in me, a ghost of the old anger, the old pride. Checking up on your investment? Making sure the settlement was enough to keep me quiet? He flinched. It wasn't like that, Gracie. Wasn't it? I did care about you. He looked down at his wedding ring, still there, I noticed. In my way. Your way wasn't enough, I said simply. He nodded, accepting this. I know. I hurt you. I'm sorry for that. How's your family? I asked, changing the subject. His face softened. Good. Better. Cadence is applying to colleges. Larry's doing well in school again. Meredith and I, he hesitated. We're working on things. Counseling, you know. And the company? Still there. Dad's talking about retiring next year. Passing the torch. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The dynasty continues. I nodded, unsurprised. Of course, the prodigal son had been forgiven, welcomed back to his rightful place. Men like Anthony always landed on their feet. Why are you really here, Anthony? I asked, suddenly tired of the small talk. He was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to see if it was worth it. If what was worth it? All of it. The affair. The pain we caused. The damage. He looked me in the eyes for the first time. Was any of it real, Gracie? Did you ever really love me? Or was I just a means to an end? A year ago, I would have lied. Would have played the wounded lover, the woman scorned. Would have tried to make him suffer, to make him doubt his decision. Instead, I told him the truth. I thought I wanted you, I said. But what I really wanted was what you represented. Security. Status. The life I thought I deserved. He nodded slowly, as if confirming something he'd long suspected. I used you, I continued. And you used me. The difference is, you had somewhere to go back to when it was over. I am sorry, he said again. For how it ended. Don't be, I replied. You did me a favor, Anthony. You showed me what I'd become. What I was willing to do to get what I thought I wanted. He looked surprised. And what was that? Someone I hated, I said simply. Someone like my father. Like my mother. Someone who takes without caring who gets hurt. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of our shared history between us. What now? He finally asked. What's next for you? I considered the question. I'm rebuilding. Starting over. Trying to create something of my own instead of taking from others. That sounds healthy. I smiled, a real smile for once. It's a work in progress. As we said our goodbyes outside the coffee shop, he hesitated, then handed me a business card. If you ever need anything. I took the card, knowing I would never use it. Take care of your family, Anthony. They're the ones who deserve a second chance. He nodded, understanding the finality in my voice. As he walked away, I felt something I hadn't expected, not closure, exactly, but a step toward it. The chapter wasn't ending. It was transforming into something else, something I was still writing. 2 years after the affair ended, I sat in my grandparents' backyard, watching my grandmother tend to her roses. She moved slower now, but with the same care, the same patience I remembered from childhood. They're looking good this year, I observed, handing her a glass of lemonade. She agreed, accepting the drink. The trick is knowing which ones to cut back. Sometimes you have to prune the strongest branches to make the whole plant healthier. I smiled at the metaphor. Subtlety had never been my grandmother's strong suit. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss, a small, women-owned agency where I'd been working for the past year. After Chicago, after hitting what felt like rock bottom, I'd found my way back to advertising but with a different perspective. No shortcuts this time. No sleeping my way to the top. Just hard work and slowly rebuilding my reputation. Good news? My grandmother asked, noting my smile. They want me to lead the pitch for the Henderson account, I said, still a little surprised. It's a big one. Of course they do, she said matter-of-factly. You've earned it. Earned it. 2 words that would have meant nothing to me 3 years ago. Now they meant everything. Later that evening, as I helped my grandfather wash dishes after dinner, he cleared his throat in the way he did when he had something important to say. Your grandmother and I have been talking, he began. Dangerous, I teased, drying a plate. He smiled. We want you to have the house, Gracie. When we're gone. I nearly dropped the plate. Grandpa, no. I can't. You can and you will, he said firmly. It's not much, but it's paid for. And everyone needs roots. I thought about the house, small, modest, in a neighborhood that would have mortified the old Gracie. The woman I used to be would have seen it as a step down, a consolation prize far removed from the penthouse apartments and executive homes I'd once coveted. Now I saw it differently. Not as a prize to be won or a status symbol, but as a home. A foundation. A place to build from rather than take from. Thank you, I said finally, my voice thick. My grandfather nodded, satisfied, and returned to his dishes. That night, as I lay in my childhood bedroom, unchanged after all these years, the same faded posters on the walls, the same twin bed that was too small for an adult, I thought about the journey. About the woman I'd been and the one I was becoming. I thought about Anthony, about Meredith, about Cadence and Larry. I wondered if they ever thought about me, if I was a cautionary tale in their story the way they had become a turning point in mine. I picked up my phone and, almost without thinking, searched for Cadence Reynolds on Instagram. Her profile was private now, but her profile picture showed a young woman in a college sweatshirt, smiling with friends. She looked happy. Whole. Healed. I felt no jealousy, no bitterness. Only a strange sense of peace. She had survived what I had helped do to her family. More than survived, she seemed to be thriving. There was a lesson there, one I was still learning. That wounds heal. That second chances exist. That it's never too late to become someone different, someone better, than who you've been. I closed Instagram and opened my email, working on the Henderson pitch until late into the night. This account, this opportunity, it wouldn't come from manipulation or seduction or taking what belonged to someone else. It would come from hard work, from creativity, from earning my place rather than stealing someone else's. As I finally drifted towards sleep, I thought about my grandmother's roses. About pruning back the strongest branches to make the whole plant healthier. About how sometimes you have to lose what you thought you wanted to find what you actually need. When people ask me if I feel guilty now, I don't laugh anymore. I tell them yes. Guilt is for people who understand how the world really works, not through taking or being taken from, but through building, healing, growing. My name is Gracie Miller, and I'm learning to create rather than take. It's harder this way. Slower. Less glamorous. But for the first time in my life, it feels real. And that, I'm discovering, is worth more than anything I ever tried to steal.
If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Don't forget to follow for more content just like this. Thanks for watching. Catch you next time.